The boy who sold laughter. The village of Brindlewood was quiet. It lay between silver hills and dusty roads. The streets were clean, but empty of joy. The baker made bread each morning. The blacksmith hammered metal until the sun set. The farmers worked their fields. But no one laughed. No one told jokes. No one remembered how it felt to smile until their cheeks hurt. Life was simple, but it was also dull. The air itself felt heavy. It was as if time had slowed down and joy had left. It had not always been like this. Long ago, Brindlewood was full of music and noise. People laughed over dinner tables. Children ran barefoot through the meadows, shouting with glee. The blacksmith would tell silly stories while working. The baker would sing when kneading dough. But years passed, and worries took over. The harvests grew smaller. Taxes grew heavier. People became tired. Slowly, laughter faded away. No one noticed when it disappeared completely. Then, one gray morning, a boy arrived. He was not like anyone the villagers had ever seen. He wore a patched coat made of many colors. He carried a small wooden box on his back. His boots were old, but his eyes sparkled like fireflies. His name was Luca. He had no parents with him. No one knew where he came from. But he walked into the square and set down his wooden box as if he belonged there. Inside his box were glass jars. Each jar glowed faintly, some golden and some silver. They looked like they held light itself. A hand-painted sign stood in front of the stall. It said, "Laughter real and rare. 1 per heart." People stopped and stared. What kind of foolish thing was this? Laughter in a jar? Who would believe it? The villagers whispered and shook their heads. They were not used to such strange things. An old woman named Agnes was the first to approach. She was known for her sharp tongue and wrinkled face. "What nonsense is this, boy?" she asked. "What are you selling? Is this a trick?" Luca smiled. He held up a small jar. "Inside is laughter," he said softly. "Would you like to hear it?" Agnes frowned, but curiosity is stronger than doubt. She nodded once. Luca uncorked the jar. A sound filled the air. It was soft, like the giggle of a baby. It was warm, like sunlight on the skin. Agnes froze. Something inside her stirred. Her eyes watered. Then, to everyone's surprise, she laughed. It was deep, rich, and real. It rolled through the square like a bell. People turned. They stopped what they were doing. They listened. They had not heard such laughter in years. One by one, villagers came closer. "What is that? Is it magic? Can I try?" Luca smiled and handed out jars. Each jar released a different sound. Some were light giggles. Some were hearty laughs. Some were the sound of children squealing with joy. Each sound made hearts feel lighter. The villagers began to smile, even the grumpy blacksmith. "Where do these come from?" someone asked. "How do you capture laughter?" Luca only said, "From those who give it freely." He did not ask for coins, though many people tried to pay him. Instead, he placed a wooden bowl near his stall. A sign on the bowl read, "Give only what you wish." Some people left coins. Others left drawings or flowers. One child left a shiny pebble. One man left nothing but whispered, "Thank you." Luca nodded at each one. Soon, the news spread. People from nearby towns heard about the boy who sold laughter. They walked for miles to see him. They brought gifts of food and cloth. They brought sadness in their hearts, hoping for a little light. Luca gave them laughter. He gave it freely. He did not count his jars. He only smiled when people laughed. It was as if that was enough payment for him. But not everyone was happy. There was a merchant named Vex. He was greedy and clever. He saw Luca's jars and thought only of gold. "These jars are worth a fortune," Vex said. "Sell them to me in bulk. I will sell them in the city and make us both rich." Luca shook his head. "They are not for hoarding," he said. "Laughter is not for profit." Vex's face darkened. "You are wasting a treasure," he said. "Do not be foolish." Luca simply closed his stall early that day. The next morning, Luca was not in the square. The villagers searched and followed a sound of giggles. They found him near the forest, under a giant willow tree. Children sat around him. They were laughing and clapping. Luca was holding a strange tool, something like a flute but with wings. He waved it gently in the air, and the children's laughter flowed into his jars. The jars glowed brighter with every giggle. "Laughter given freely can be shared," he told the children. "But it must never be taken with greed." The villagers watched in awe. They understood why he would not sell to Vex. Days turned into weeks. The village began to change. People smiled more. The baker sang again. The blacksmith told funny stories while he worked. Children played until sunset, their voices echoing. The air felt lighter. The square seemed brighter. But one morning, Luca found his wooden box empty. Not a single jar was left. He was confused. He checked the willow tree, the stream, the fields. Then he saw footprints. Muddy footprints leading into the woods. The villagers joined him. They followed the trail until they reached a broken fence. There, on the ground, lay dozens of shattered jars. The laughter inside them was gone. It had vanished like smoke. Vex stood nearby, angry and defeated. "I tried to sell them," he admitted. "But they lost their sound when I did. They are worthless now." Luca did not shout. He did not scold Vex. He simply picked up a broken piece and whispered, "Laughter cannot live in greed." The loss was heavy. Without the jars, the village felt empty again. The people returned to their dull routines. Even the children were quiet. Luca sat under the willow, head bowed. He had nothing left to give. He felt like he had failed. But then Agnes came. She brought him tea and a joke about her old cat. Luca smiled. Then the children came. They brought painted stones, silly hats, and songs. The baker brought a muffin shaped like a chicken. The blacksmith juggled hammers, dropping them and laughing. Slowly, laughter returned. Not from jars, not from magic, but from hearts. Luca's eyes filled with tears. "You have remembered," he said. "Laughter is not something I can give. It is something you all already have." That spring, the villagers created a new tradition. They called it the Festival of Laughter. There was no money, no trade, no seriousness. Only joy. People wore silly costumes. They played games. They shared stories and jokes. Children filled jars with their own laughter, just to keep as memories. Even Vex came, dressed as a goat, to make the children laugh. Luca no longer needed his stall. He became part of the village. He told stories about faraway places. He taught the children how to capture laughter, not for selling, but for remembering. He said, "A jar is only a reminder. The real laughter is in your heart." The villagers never forgot his words. As years passed, travelers continued to visit Brindlewood. They had heard of the boy who once sold laughter. Some said he had wings now, flying from village to village. Others said he walked the world with his wooden box, bringing joy to those who had forgotten. No one knew for sure. But in Brindlewood, every spring, children still gather under the willow tree. They laugh, play, and fill jars with their giggles. Not to keep, not to sell, but to remind everyone that laughter, when shared, never runs out. Luca's story lived on. Parents told it to their children at bedtime. The old woman Agnes would sit near the fire and say, "I remember the day I laughed again. It was because of that boy." The blacksmith carved a small wooden statue of Luca with a jar in his hand. It stood in the village square as a reminder. The baker made sweet bread shaped like smiling faces each spring, saying it was her tribute to the boy. One evening, years later, a group of travelers stopped in Brindlewood. They asked about Luca. They carried stories of a boy with a patchwork coat who had been seen in other villages. "He goes where laughter is lost," one traveler said. "He does not stay. He moves like the wind." The villagers smiled. They did not know if this was true, but they liked to believe it. Maybe Luca was still out there, spreading joy. The festival of laughter grew bigger each year. People from far places came to join. They brought masks, painted faces, and funny dances. Children performed plays. Adults played pranks on each other. It was a day when everyone, young and old, remembered how to laugh without reason. The willow tree was decorated with ribbons and bells. The jars filled with giggles glowed under the moonlight. And at the end of the night, the villagers would open the jars all at once, releasing a wave of laughter that echoed through the hills. Luca's story was no longer just a story. It became a lesson. It taught people that joy cannot be bought or sold. It cannot be trapped or owned. It lives in moments. It grows when shared. It fades when forgotten. And every spring, when the festival lights the sky, someone whispers, "Thank you, Luca."